Well, welcome everyone to Night Matters, Perspectives on Community-Friendly Lighting Policies and Practices. By way of introduction, my name is Aubrey Larson. I am the coordinator for the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative, and I am also a community development specialist at the state's Community Development Office. And we're excited to have three incredible panelists talk to you this morning. We have Sophie Frankenberg, who was a former associate planner at Springdale Town. Sophie Bellina, assistant coordinator for the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative. So she works with me. And yes, we do have two Sophies. And we also have two Johns on the call. And then we're excited to have John Barentine, who is the Director of Public Policy at the International Dark Sky Association. If you've had questions such as why is light pollution a timely and relevant issue, how are students working with communities to protect their night skies, what motivates a town to be proactive in protecting the dark, or how can proper lighting practices solve problems before they start? If you've had these questions, then this session is for you. And we are going to play a pre-recorded 40-minute session, and you'll get to know our panelists a little bit more. And then at the end, we'll come back together for Q&A. So I will be moderating questions, so please submit those throughout the presentation. And I just wanted to put in a plug for a resource that's available on the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative website, cpdarkskies.org. Dark Sky Planning, an Introduction for Local Leaders. This is a great introductory resource if you want to delve in more into what we will be discussing today. And with that, we're going to do a quick poll to see who's on the call with us today. So about 45 seconds. Okay, it looks like we have 3 council members, someone from city staff, a planning commissioner, and someone who just loves to attend conferences. So welcome. This session should be relevant to each of you. And with that, I will turn it over to the tech to hit play on today's session. Thanks, everyone.
The first time I saw the stars in a very meaningful way was I was a 9th grade student in Nairobi in Kenya, and we had many cultural trips. And for our freshman class, what we did was we went and climbed Mount Kenya, which was the 2nd highest mountain in Africa. Now, I've been growing up in Lima, Peru, and we have a lot of humidity because we're a coastal city, and we also have a lot of pollution. And so I never really thought of looking up at the sky. There wasn't much in terms of the night sky. I mean, we could see the moon, that's very obvious, but really the stars weren't something that we looked at. But then when I went there to Kenya, and we were on the field trip with my classmates, I remember the last night as we were going to Crest, we had to get up at about 2:30, maybe 3 in the morning, because again, we have to climb up and then start coming down before the sun starts to melt the snow and the ice. So I literally was forced to look up because I had to be climbing. And that's for the first time that I saw all of the stars really in their glory. I saw the Milky Way, and I saw so many other little stars. I had, I'm sure, seen stars before. I'm sure they were just there, but this time it was just the entire sky was covered in stars. And it was just an amazing experience. And after that, I wanted to recreate that. However, going back to Nairobi, I couldn't see as many. Again, light pollution, the city's kind of large, it's growing quickly. There was not much in terms of preserving the dark skies, but it stayed with me, and it's something that now is a part of my life.
My name is John Barentine, and I'm the Director of Public Policy at the International Dark Sky Association. Light pollution is any sort of adverse or unintended effect of the use of artificial light at night. And it takes many forms, not only what people think of when they look at the night sky and they realize they can't see the stars from in the city, which is a symptom of light pollution, but it's other things like glare on roadways at night that makes it difficult to see things. It's light trespass. It's the lighting from your neighbor's porch light, for example, that is falling into your bedroom window at night and making you upset and making it difficult for you to sleep. So these are all aspects of light pollution because while they are related to legitimate uses of light at night, they create consequences that are unintended and are usually considered to be obtrusive. Dark sky conservation matters for a number of reasons, and it depends on how you look at it or how you approach the problem. For people who are interested in the arts and humanities, it's the night sky that connects us to an ancient history that usually connected humans with nature for thousands of years, but only has recently been severed due to the introduction of artificial light at night. If you're an ecologist, you probably care about light pollution because it's known to be damaging to a number of plant and animal species. And that's not just at the low level, but it's all the way up to humans. And we know of some instances where humans are immediately and directly impacted by exposure to artificial light at night, and that can include everything from insomnia to cancer. If you care about landscape protection or wild places, you should care about light pollution because it impacts the view as seen from these wild places where the night sky makes up literally half of the landscape. It's not just the land, but it's the sky also. And even if you're a city dweller and you're not connected to these other things, you should care about light pollution because it impacts public safety and the incidence of crime in ways that we know are sort of counterintuitive to what people would believe, in the sense that they think that more light is better for those situations and it makes it easier to see at night and it also discourages crime. But we know that too much light in the wrong places at the wrong time can have the opposite effect. So it's important to be mindful about our use of artificial light at night, and that's the key to solving the problem of light pollution. We do that by rethinking the way that we use artificial light at night. It's something that's still relatively new to our Earth and our environment because we've only had the ability to put a lot of light into the environment for about the past 130 years. So this is still a new phenomenon that both biology and the night sky are sort of adjusting to. And the way to do it is just change our thinking about how we use that light. Make sure that that light's directed to the places where it is needed and when it is needed in the right quantities. And we should also think about the color of that light because we know that short wavelength or blue light has a disproportionate impact on the nighttime environment. If we did those things, if we constrained our use of light only to those situations where we really needed it, then we would be able to solve this problem immediately. Light pollution is not like other forms of environmental pollution, like air and water pollution. In those cases, once you stop the source of the pollution, it could take years or decades for the pollutant to make its way out of the system. The good news about light pollution is that we can solve this problem quite literally at the speed of light. When we remove the source of the pollution in this case, it immediately leaves the environment, and we can begin to see an improvement also immediately.
There are multiple reasons and benefits for mitigating light pollution inside a community. Enhanced property values, being able to tap into a global astrotourism market, improved quality of life, energy savings, creating clear legal expectations, environmental management, community unity, and for some communities that are interested in an international dark sky community certification, international visibility and recognition. Utah is home to some of the darkest skies in the nation and is actually a national leader in dark sky protection and preservation. Many communities throughout the state have recognized that natural nighttime darkness is an important natural resource, and they understand the economic, ecological, and cultural value of protecting the dark.
Hello, and welcome to our session titled Night Matters, Perspectives in Community-Friendly Lighting Policies and Practices. Today we'll hear from three speakers who will be discussing different aspects of how the community is working towards improving access to dark skies. Sophie Frankenberg will start by discussing Springdale, Utah's dark sky journey from Ordinance to future dark sky community. Sophie Bolino will follow and discuss the Dark Sky Studies minor at the University of Utah and also the community support that we've encountered from Helper Utah. Finally, John Barentine will discuss good neighbor policy considerations. My name is Daniel Mendoza. I am the director for a Dark Sky Studies minor at the University of Utah, which is the first of its kind in the world. It was started about 1.5 years ago. We were putting together ideas as to how we could formalize studying dark skies. Several faculty members convened and we started coalescing the ideas for a syllabus and for a curriculum. We are very proud to announce that we will be having our first cohort of students finish the minor this semester. I am personally teaching the capstone class, and we are trying to combine several elements to make sure that we touch on all aspects of dark skies and their importance to our society. We also want to increase the amount of support that we provide communities that are growing in their interest in preserving their dark skies, which is why we have a section called News You Can Use, where communities can share what they have done in the past and how they have moved from simply wanting to improve their dark skies to actually going through with it through city ordinances and further regulations. What is important to all of us is to educate how important this is and how preserving our dark skies is really something that really triggers many different aspects. Things such as economic diversification, the impact of tourism that dark skies can have. Looking at the protection of ecosystems, such topics as bird migration, and even the hatching of sea turtles that get confused and start walking towards the shore because they see the bright city lights and confuse it with the moon. And all of these topics really affect us as we keep growing. Something that we are all very keenly aware of is population growth and urban development. However, light pollution is growing at twice the rate of urbanization. So this is definitely a topic that is very relevant as we grow very quickly. Utah is expected to grow in population. It's expected to double in population by 2050. So especially for many communities in the West, because we do have that intersection of having more natural darkness, because we do have expansive wilderness areas, but also have some of the fastest rates of urbanization, this is a topic that really touches home. I welcome you to stay after the session and ask us questions. We will all be available. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce Sophie Frankenberg. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy our session.
Hello, my name is Sophie Frankenberg. I'm currently a graduate student in the City and Metropolitan Planning program at the University of Utah. Today, I'm going to be talking with you all about the town of Springdale's efforts to preserve the night sky. A little background on the community. Springdale is located in Washington County, down in the southwestern corner of Utah. Springdale is considered a gateway community as it is located directly adjacent to the south entrance of Zion National Park, nestled within the Greater Zion Canyon. Because of the proximity to the park, the partnership between the town and the national park is extremely important. Springdale consists of about 600 full-time residents. However, this town experiences over 4.5 million visitors per year. Because of this, the town has seen significant growth and has become quite prolific over the last 10 to 15 years. Everything from hotels and transient lodging alternatives to single and multifamily residences, along with other commercial businesses, have been developed. As of 2020, it is assumed that about 80% of the total developable properties within the town have been built out. Because the town's cultural and economic values are rooted deeply in the surrounding natural amenities, dark sky preservation has been at the forefront for many years. Today, I'm going to share with you Springdale's journey to becoming a dark sky certified community. The process began in 2009 as development increased throughout the town. Springdale initiated efforts and passed their very first outdoor lighting ordinance. This ordinance shaped how new and old development would use lighting in outdoor spaces. This included an amortization period where all outdoor lighting within the town on both public and private properties was required to meet the new fixture regulations. These regulations required that all fixtures be downward directed and fully shielded so as no light would emit from the top of the fixture or horizontally from the sides. The ordinance also regulated where outdoor lighting could be installed. Architecture, landscaping, and any other lighting in non-functional areas would be prohibited. Additionally, sign illumination would be required to meet many standards as outlined in the ordinance, such as constant lighting, and internally illuminated signs are limited to illumination of sign copy only. With the outdoor lighting ordinance, community outreach and education was extremely important. Just like all new regulation or change, informing the community on the benefits of implementing an outdoor lighting ordinance was crucial. By 2015, a town-wide audit of all non-conforming outdoor lighting was completed. This helped property owners plan accordingly and come into compliance with the outdoor lighting standards. The town also had to bring their own outdoor lighting into compliance as well, as stated in the 2009 outdoor lighting ordinance. This meant an overhaul of all streetlights along State Route 9, the main road through the town and into Zion National Park. In conjunction with UDOT, the town began its process of finding dark sky compliant streetlights. Additionally, in 2015, the town began its process of updating the general plan. The general plan, which was passed in 2016, has a reoccurring theme of dark sky preservation throughout. I want to touch on this point specifically because I think it is really important as a public official or decision maker that you back up your regulating ordinances with concurrent language in your master and general plans. Additionally, it provides the community with reasoning as to why regulation exists. I think highlighting all of these areas where lighting and night sky preservation techniques benefit the community is extremely important. As you can see in the slide, Springdale found that dark sky preservation fell under a variety of goals, including visual focus on natural features, transportation and encouraging safety and maintenance, lighting and night sky, and even capital project improvements. Like many good general plans, it should encompass the vision and values of the community. To see dark sky preservation as a consistent theme, that indicates that the community feels it is worth working towards. From 2018 to 2019, all properties within Springdale came into compliance as the amortization period had concluded. The town streetlights had been researched, manufactured, and installed throughout town. Night sky preservation was still top priority for the town council, and a more serious look into becoming a dark sky certified community began for the town of Springdale. With that direction, staff began researching the requirements for a community to become certified. With the International Dark Sky Association guidelines, a more robust revision to the outdoor lighting ordinance was passed in 2020. The ordinance built upon the previous outdoor lighting ordinance. It now requires all light temperatures to be 3,000 Kelvin or less, a cap on lumens for commercial properties, and additional fixture requirements to limit light trespass. The town also began its 5-year general plan update. The cool thing about the public participation for a general plan update is that the community, even more so than before, felt that dark sky preservation was still very much a priority, and that they overwhelmingly supported efforts being put forward to becoming a certified dark sky community. This is truly a success story for the town of Springdale because of that community support. It has been 11 years since the first ordinance was passed in 2009. The resistance that existed towards outdoor lighting regulations back then is almost non-existent today. The support comes from new residents and long-term residents. Even architects and developers are on board. Everyone feels it is something that would benefit the town for many years to come. Although the town is not certified yet, it is anticipated that within a year, they can join the many other communities and national parks in Utah and beyond as a dark sky certified place. I want to end this story with just a few takeaways. First is the importance of education and outreach. Whether you are a light engineer or someone who simply enjoys staring up at a starry night sky, there are so many resources for you. The Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperation and the International Dark Sky Association are great places to start. Second, astrotourism is a growing industry. Communities are realizing that natural amenities and dark skies go hand in hand, and people travel thousands of miles for that all-encompassing experience. And lastly, preservation efforts must be community-oriented and directed, and make sure that it is backed up. Go out to your communities and build consensus around these efforts. It will make your journey towards dark sky preservation that much more successful. And although Springdale's journey has taken place over a decade, it is just one community story. Don't be intimidated and use the resources available. And I'm sure you too can be a part of preserving the night sky. And with that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to pass you along to Sophie Bellina to tell another story on a community's path towards dark sky certification.
Hello everybody, my name is Sophie Bellina and I am the Assistant Coordinator for the Colorado Plateau Dark Sky Cooperative. I am also a student at the University of Utah, where I am currently finishing up my undergraduate degree in urban ecology with a minor in dark sky studies. As a student, but also as aspiring urban planner, I want to highlight the university's new minor program of dark sky studies and how the next generation of young minds is engaging in dark sky conservation efforts. For that, I have created a short video and I hope that you will enjoy it.
We have about 4 vans that we brought down here, and we're caravanning around everywhere. And it was so cool to see everybody getting out of their vans up in the cemetery, and everyone seeing the stars. I cried because I am from a place where there are no stars. So seeing that many stars, I was starstruck.
My name's Lenise Peterman, and I'm Helper City's mayor. I love that in a smaller rural community that you can have such a big impact because you bring different skills and talents to the table. So I love that about our community. I love the diversity of our community, the history, and the artistic component. I believe the dark sky designation puts us on a map. It puts us on a map as an astrotourism location, which is cutting edge right now. I think it will continue to evolve and we will see multiples of that. But to be a new one would be key. And then I've been lucky to engage the University of Utah and Helper in 2019. We're going to be the field laboratory for the Dark Scholars program. So they'll be sending their kids down to help us with our light monitoring and help us achieve, you know, a reduction in light pollution and all of those things. So I'm super excited about that.
The Consortium for Dark Sky Studies at the University of Utah is dedicated to the discovery, development, communication, and application of knowledge across a wide range of disciplines and professional fields pertaining to the quality of night skies, growing light pollution, and the varied human, animal, and environmental responses to the disappearing dark. Through the collaboration with the Consortium for Dark Sky Studies, the College of Architecture and Planning, and multiple other departments from across campus, the U is now home to the first higher education program dedicated to the study of the scientific, cultural, and artistic relationships to the night sky. The Dark Sky Studies minor program is the first of its kind and welcomes students from all disciplines. The program is designed to engage young minds with the science behind protecting dark skies, artistic opportunities related to the beauty of this precious natural resource, and to comprehending the cultural and environmental value of a star-filled night sky. The minor also recognizes the crucial value of involving and listening to communities about the night sky conservation goals. This valuable community engagement experience takes place in both urban and rural settings. Currently, a handful of students are working with the Salt Lake Center for Science Education and the Natural History Museum to engage with the next generation of young creators in order to foster a strong connection to the night sky. This capstone project enables college students to share their experience of working in this new field of dark skies, while also encouraging middle and high school students to participate in the development of the neighborhoods. Recently, in a more rural setting, the first Dark Sky Studies minor cohort spent a weekend in central Utah to assist Helper City with the goal of becoming Utah's second certified international dark sky community. I was one of these students and want to share my experience with you. To the residents of Helper, being able to see the Milky Way from anywhere in town is an important part of the rural character and identity, and is something they want to preserve for generations to come. In order to support the completion of the city's International Dark Sky Community application, we took different lighting measurements throughout the city, including at the cemetery, the darkest place in town. It was here where several of my peer students saw the Milky Way for the very first time. This meaningful experience of finally seeing what we are all trying to protect set the tone for the rest of the weekend. Besides recording lighting levels and the town's sky quality, we participated in a town hall meeting to learn more about the community's connection to the night sky. Some residents shared their personal experiences and reasons why they want to protect the night sky, such as meaningful childhood memories, spiritual connections, or for environmental and health reasons. These two projects of hands-on student engagement are examples of how University of Utah students engage with Utah communities. Studying the dark sky is a brand new field that offers countless opportunities in terms of professional development, outdoor recreation, finding meaningful experiences and connections, and also engaging with peer community members. We are all living under the same sky, and I encourage all of you to do your part in making sure future generations can experience the same kind of awe when seeing the Milky Way for the very first time.
Good morning, everyone. My name is John Barentine, and I am the Director of Public Policy at the International Dark Sky Association. And today I will be speaking to you about good neighbor lighting policy considerations. So how can we set up various public policies for regulating outdoor lighting that help preserve good relations between neighbors and keep everybody happy? That we can achieve that goal, we'll keep light out of the night sky, we'll keep it on the ground where it is needed, and we'll avoid these conflicts between neighbors as much as possible. So what I'll speak to you about today is outlined right here. First, I'll talk about the concept of nuisance in the common law, which is an attempt to prevent the problem and solve it before it even starts. I'll define what light trespass is, because that concept is really at the heart of nuisance as it applies to outdoor lighting. I'll tell you how to find appropriate lighting for your projects that take these ideas into consideration. And finally, I'll talk about how we make these good neighbor policies compulsory through the law, and we make them durable so that they're observed, and again, try to prevent this conflict from arising and to keep people happy. So first, about the common law and the idea of nuisance. there's an idea in the common law, which is different than the statutory law, the code of laws that has been written over many hundreds of years, from a sort of a set of norms or traditions that have evolved over centuries. And the basic rule of that common law is that it's obligatory to do no harm to other people. And that's whether by intent or omission. So it can be either proactively avoiding certain behaviors that cause problems for other people, or taking care that we're not creating problems inadvertently by something that we're not doing. And in the context of land use in particular, and how lighting is applied to land use policies, nuisance is something that causes some sort of interference in an unreasonable way with the use and enjoyment of somebody else's property. So as much as we believe in the rights to our own private property, as a society, we feel that we have some obligation to our neighbors to ensure that our activities are not unduly infringing on their rights to enjoy their property. This comes in two forms. One is a private form of nuisance, which is most common. That's the dispute between private parties where outdoor lighting is involved. But it's also possible to have a situation where there is a public nuisance, where somebody's land use interferes with the entire community somehow. So a property owner, for example, who is shining their light into a roadway where it is not wanted or needed would be a form of a public nuisance. And the courts have long since decided that these disputes are justiciable, meaning that the courts have jurisdiction to resolve these disputes, and they have been able to bring awards of damages in private suits about nuisance, or issue injunctions that force property owners to make changes to their lighting to abate the nuisance. So as the little cartoon picture implies, this is a balancing act. There are multiple different motivations and considerations that go into this. We have to account for all the parties or players in a situation and to try to find the resolutions that do the best job for the greatest number of people. So the core idea as applies to lighting in this case is this notion of light trespass. And the cartoon picture here suggests what this is. It's light that's emitted on one property that falls somewhere else where it's probably not wanted. The best analogy that I can make that most people are familiar with is noise ordinances, which your community probably has one. It basically says that you're not entitled to have a loud party at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that. You should keep your sound inside your house, and you're free to do whatever you want with it if it's in your house, but your neighbors shouldn't hear it beyond some certain times that are declared in the law. So this is the equivalent of a noise complaint or a sound trespass idea, but it's with light. So what we want to try to do is encourage people to keep their light on their own property and prevent these common law disputes from arising in the first place. When you're creating lighting plans for your projects, the best way to find appropriate lighting for those projects that take into account this idea is to look at our Fixture Seal of Approval program, which you can access at that link in the lower left. We screen and vet different lighting products from different manufacturers according to the series of listing requirements that's there on the left. These are all elements of what we think are good lighting design that will again help keep the light where it's needed and prevent it from going to places that it is not. So you know that if you see our service mark on a product package or a product data sheet, that it meets these criteria, and when it's thoughtfully applied in a lighting design, it will contribute to preventing light trespass and therefore eliminating the potential for nuisance in this regard. And I'll talk a little bit more about these particulars in a minute, because some of the listing requirements here are directly pertinent to what we think are the good elements of outdoor lighting policy. So we'll come back to this. How do we make these changes durable in public policy? This is something that's been evolving for decades, almost since the introduction of electric light a little more than a century ago, and it continues to evolve. Basically, this is a little crash course in how policies are made. There are two overriding kinds of policy that evolve and are developed in the public sphere. These are binding policies that we usually think of as laws that we have to obey. And then there are non-binding policies, which are suggestive of things that people are encouraged to do, maybe by a legislative body, but don't carry the force of law behind them. And then in the little cloud down in the lower right, this is where we group together all these other things that are not necessarily what we would call policies, much less public policies, but they are policies nonetheless, and they influence people's behaviors. And so I put in that cloud things like decisions and precedents of courts, the traditions and norms in our society, and the common law. Basically what we want to do is incorporate all of this. And on the binding side, that's where lighting ordinances live. So you have these different ways of approaching it. Those can be literal ordinances, which are the local statutory laws, but there are also regulatory laws that are not, they don't work in this quite the same way. They might be building codes, for example. What kind of lighting are you allowed to put on the exteriors of buildings? Or if you're in certain jurisdictions overseas, like the United Kingdom, they have a system of planning permission. You have to have your plans reviewed by a review board of some kind before you're issued a certificate, kind of like a building permit in the United States to proceed with the project. So there are ways to get at these different kinds of policy that affect the way outdoor lighting is designed and implemented. That again is going back to this idea that we're trying to prevent these disputes from neighbors arising so that the courts never have to settle them. Everybody understands what the rules are, and if we adhere to them, we can avoid these problems arising in the first place. Some of the principles in the policy realm that we deal with a lot as regards lighting are summarized here on this slide. I'll just run through them really quickly. The jurisdiction that a policy affects is important. That basically tells you who regulates what. Most lighting policy in the United States is made on the municipal level. It's to a lesser extent, maybe at the county or state level, and very little, if any, at the federal level. This is really considered to be a local issue. And so we run into concerns like supremacy. Whose law governs? Your state might have some kind of outdoor lighting law, but probably it will not apply to private property owners because that is typically delegated down to the level of local city and village councils. There's also this issue of home rule. Should the communities themselves have the legal right to make this policy, or as in the case in certain states, are they prohibited from making these rules unless the state specifically grants them that ability, or does the state reserve that capacity unto itself? It really depends on where you live. So we have to know something about the jurisdiction in order to write good policies. How are actions regulated? There are different ways of doing this. There are positive and negative ways. You can either say you're allowed to do A, B, and C, but not D. Or you might have a policy that says everything is allowed except A, B, and C. So understanding whether you're proactively allowing certain things or simply prohibiting anything except for a short list will determine how this plays out in your community. A lot of people wonder whether this can really be settled in the courts. So if you have a lighting ordinance in your community and your local city government is not so interested in enforcing the details, people ask me sometimes, well, why can't we bring suit against them to try to compel the community to enforce? And there's a principle in our legal system called sovereign immunity that says essentially you can't sue the government unless the government consents to being a party in the suit. So there are cases where there are statutory laws on the books that prohibit certain kinds of lighting that are not really enforced very rigorously, but the individual or the property owner retains the right through the common law system to bring private suits over the issue of nuisance. But again, we're trying to avoid that in the first place. And there's just this idea of best practice as well. Whether or not something is codified into law, the experts will recognize that there are these collection of actions that are known to be those that produce the best result, and sometimes merely adhering to best practice is sort of good enough in that respect. So we should keep these ideas in mind. What makes for good outdoor lighting policies? It's these few principles over there in yellow on the right. From warranting of lighting, is the lighting necessary? Is it proper to deploy it in certain circumstances? We can further set that up according to zoning, like zoning overlays in a land use code. Fully shielding lights is important to prevent light trespass. Overlighting protection, making sure that we're not using vastly more light than is necessary to get the job done. We should worry about the spectrum or the color of that light because some colors are perceived more harshly to the eye than others. We should encourage the use of adaptive controls. These are things like dimmers, timing circuits that ensure that the light is there when it's needed and it's not when it isn't. That can be as simple as putting something like a motion sensing switch on a light. And plan review. If you're especially like a commercial or industrial application where you would have a lighting plan for a building complex, that should be subject to review by the community authority in order to make sure that the lighting rules are being followed properly. So if we do all of these things, this is the outcome that we hope for. This is the goal. This sort of community or neighbor-friendly lighting that's suggested in the picture, where now the person on the left is keeping that light on his property. It doesn't cross the property line. It's in the right amount. It's only there when it needs to be. It's kept out of both the night sky and the neighbor's window and avoids a lot of these problems, as we said in the first place. So if we're very mindful about how we do this, we go about it deliberately, we craft good policies, we make clear what neighbors' responsibilities are to one another in the law, we can achieve this sort of outcome, which has benefits all the way around. It's good for astronomy, it's good for the nighttime environment, it's good for wildlife, and most importantly, it's good for community relations. And for that reason, this is why I think we should pursue these kind of policy goals. And with that, I thank you for your attention, and I will hand it back over to the moderator.
Okay, time for questions. It doesn't look like we have any yet, but if you have questions for today's panelists, please type them into the chat bar. I will invite our awesome panel to turn on their cameras if they are able, and we'll take some questions now. Unless we answered all of your questions. Lisa Zump says, hi, Sophie, good job. I will echo that. Good job. Both of our Sophies and John, thank you. We hope you enjoyed our session. We have a question from, and I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Dels Snyder. He's asking how appropriate, or she, I apologize, how appropriate or practical is it to pursue dark sky policies in a suburb with surrounding cities? I think this would be a good question for John.
That's a great question, and sometimes we are asked that. Is it worth pursuing these kinds of policies if you're adjacent to a big city? You would think, how does this help us? It's not going to do anything about our night sky because the city that's next to us is a bigger problem. And I would suggest that no matter what your circumstances, where you're situated with respect to other cities, this can benefit your community because we're focusing on the conditions on the ground. We want to make nighttime visibility better. We want to keep glare out of the eyes of motorists and bicyclists and pedestrians. We want to, encourage these neighborly relations, and that's true really no matter where you live. So I think there's a role for every community, no matter its size or its geographic location, to play, because it will realize benefits directly, even if they are other than a change or improvement in the night sky.
Thank you, John. We have a comment from John Goldner from Alta. Thank you. No questions at this point. Just want to say excellent job, and I look forward to following through with all 4 Dark Skies for Alta. Awesome. Thank you, John. And then we have a question from Sean Kelly. What are some ideas to encourage community buy-in? I'm curious, Sophie Frankenberg, do you have some ideas on this question relative to Springdale?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and I don't think there is just one answer to that. I think that the most important thing is just educating. I think as soon as you start talking about the reason to implement lighting ordinances and an overarching like light fixture amortization, there's really no good reason not to. As soon as people start to talk about safety concerns, you know, you are not eliminating all lighting. That's not the goal. So it's just keeping that in mind and just educate. There's so many resources out there already, so you don't have to make anything up. you can really tap into what has already been discovered and implemented.
Absolutely. Thank you, Sophie. Any other panelists want to comment on that question? Ideas to encourage community buy-in. Okay, great. We have another comment from Lisa again. I'm in Springdale. Sophie F. was very involved with what we have done so far. We have been working on lighting for a while. One of the new issues is indoor lighting trespassing out windows off both commercial and residential properties into windows. Any suggestions on how we can make this better? There has been some resistance on telling what folks can do inside their houses. Ideas from our panel.
That is admittedly tricky because you are starting to impose on the inside of the home, which has the different situation than the outside. Oftentimes people don't think very about their window treatment, the amount of might be making it outside from the indoor environment. But remember, if people can see your light outside, they can see inside your house. And I think the best argument in this case is unless you want what's going on in your house to be on public display, it's a nice thing to do for your neighbors if you would put up some curtains or some blinds.
And I have one more comment on that. Lisa, as I know that you are very involved, Lisa is a council member for the town of Springdale. So she's been really involved with lighting and while I was there as well. Another kind of idea with regulation and especially building design is Springdale had an ordinance that regulated the amount of windows you can have if you are in a zone that is up high on a foothill or a ridge. So that is a technique, but it's definitely, as John said, it's a tricky one to tackle as well.
Thanks, John and Sophie. Excellent question, Lisa. We have another question. I am a new city council member. No one in my city leadership has ever talked about dark sky issues before. How do I effectively bring up the subject in my city? This is an excellent question. And if you don't mind typing in what city, I'm curious. No pressure, just curious. Any panelists want to comment on this question?
I think probably in my experience in dealing with a lot of municipal governments in different parts of the US, and this goes for whether I'm talking to somebody who's on the council or in a city manager's office or a member of the public that wants to bring this up, for example, at a council meeting, is to make this as locally focused an issue as possible in a couple of ways. One is to figure out what's the current state of affairs in your community. Do you have a lot of problematic lighting? Have you been hearing complaints from people about lighting? You know, it may or may not be a contentious issue right now. But the other is to kind of put it in the context that best works with the realities of your community. There may be some issues that resonate more or less with residents. In communities, for example, Springdale is a great example because it's a gateway community to a national park. The concerns about the impact on the park, which are kind of broadly maybe labeled environmental, it might be a bad word in some communities, but there it might make much more sense because it ties into their tourism infrastructure. And in other places, you won't have that. It might be something else. It might be, again, community relations might be the bigger issue. Quality of life. We talk about amenity west communities, that a lot of people move into these places because they want to see the night sky, or they want to have that sort of quiet enjoyment. So I would recommend assessing the current situation in your community with respect to lighting, and then finding out which are those elements that most resonate with your population base, and that's your entry point into the subject.
Thanks, John. And I'm going to post a resource in the chat window for you. These are, I believe it's 9 strategies for approaching a community in dark skies. This is from the Cooperative's Dark Sky Toolbox, and this was put together by a group here in Utah of IDA members. So I think they know what they're talking about. So I encourage you to check that out. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Fantastic question. Any other comments relative to that question? Great. Are there other questions from our attendees? Okay. Any last comments from our awesome panel? I'm going to give you a little applause. You did fantastic, and I appreciate each of your contributions. And a shout out to the Dark Sky Studies minor. Daniel Mendoza was going to try and join us, but I think he's in a meeting right now. So if you want to learn more about the minors, Sophie Bellina is a great resource, and I can also share Daniel's contact information. But this is the first of its kind in the nation, having students come and study dark skies, which is incredible. With that, I guess we're finished for the day, unless there's any other questions. I have contact information for each of our panelists, which I am very happy to share, and just get in touch. I'll put my email in the chat window for anyone that wants to get resources or needs contact information. We're happy to connect you. It's Aubrey Christensen at utah.gov if you want to reach out to my community development office email. So with that, I'll turn it to our tech, and I think we are done for the day. Thanks, everyone. We're so glad that we had 10 people with us today. Awesome. Thank you.